San Francisco votes to overwhelmingly recall progressive District Attorney Chesa Boudin. It happened. I would have said no on this one, and I think I have said no on this one, that this would happen. I didn't think it would happen. I didn't think the citizens of San Francisco, almost said Seattle, I didn't think the citizens of San Francisco would rally and actually boot out this progressive guy that just, don't prosecute, let him out of jail. I mean, just literally has created a situation in San Francisco where you've got criminals running around willy-nilly. And this has happened across many areas of the United States where you've got these progressive folks in, not only legislature, but in, public safety offices, district attorneys. And they're really mucking things up, in my opinion, because it's like, okay, you got criminals, they belong in jail, but you're just letting them out thinking that this is going to somehow get better if you let the animals run the prison, let the animals run the zoo. It's not working out. In San Francisco, I think finally put their foot down and said, no. It's gotten so bad in San Francisco that they've literally recalled a progressive. I mean, how wild is that? That's what we're talking about today. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies. I read news stories like this. It's important stuff. It's reasonable. That's why we're doing it. Okay, let's jump in and take a quick peek. We're looking at CBS. We're going to read from CBS News and see what they have to say. They wouldn't lie to us, would they? They might. Got to be careful. Got to read between those lines. San Francisco residents voted overwhelmingly Tuesday to recall District Attorney Chesa Boudin, one of the nation's most progressive top prosecutors. So partial results from the San Francisco Department of Elections on Tuesday night showed the recall measure, also known as Proposition H. Proposition H had the support of nearly 60% of voters, with 40% voting against it. That's a pretty wide margin of victory so far going, on a recall. Usually they're super tight because you voted somebody in, voting them out, much more difficult. If you look historically at the recalls, how those go, typically they don't. Look at the governor of California. We just recently had a recall on that, right? They didn't recall him. They're like, doing a good job. Keep it up. 2 thumbs up. Keep going. Boudin sought to reform the criminal justice system, ending the use of cash bail, stopping the prosecution of minors as adults, and focused on lowering jail populations amid the COVID-19 pandemic. That's literally what he's been doing, is just, let's empty these jails out. They all belong on the streets, right? Convicted felons, let's just let them go. Let's just see how this experiment goes. We owe it to these people to, live life a little more free. Boudin also became the first San Francisco district attorney to file homicide charges against city police officers. So you can kind of see the direction this guy has gone in. And I think in a couple of years, it just got so bad. And San Francisco residents looked around and went, this is crappy. We need to do something pronto. And that's what they're doing. That's what they've got going on. It's wild. I did not see this one coming because so much of this stuff has been, if you've got somebody that's progressive, it seems like, they're kind of diamond plated, or they have been the last couple of years, that whole George Floyd thing and that kind of stuff. It seems like they've almost been protected. Is this a chink in the armor? Chink as in gap, not some racist thing, right? At an election night gathering, Boudin told his supporters he is just getting started in the push for criminal justice reform. I think we need criminal justice reform getting back to where we kind of came from, which was putting the criminals in jail, letting them cool their jets. Because right now in Seattle alone, we've just got people, I was watching local news this morning, and the first 4 news stories right off the bat were, all right, well, we had a shooting here. We had a carjacking here. We had somebody that's showing up in court because they carjacked a car with a 7-year-old kid in the background, in the back seat. And then we had, DUI guy that killed another guy on a Seattle bridge. I mean, they're showing up in jail. Just some tough stuff going on. And so many of the times these crimes that are happening are being committed by people who have a long criminal history. They know the criminal system and they're just out running around willy-nilly. We have two cities. We have two systems of justice. We have one for the wealthy and the well-connected, and a different one for everybody else. And that's exactly what we're fighting to change, he said. All right, well, he fought that battle for a couple of years, and now it seems like that battle is heading the other direction. Are we heading in the other direction, or was he just so bad that he got recalled? Maybe a little of both. I'm not sure. But I know people in San Francisco have been, what are you doing? Well, you voted him in, and that's what you got. I mean, he was very transparent. He was very truth-telling about what he was going to try and accomplish. But in doing so, I think the citizens of San Francisco have been looking in, on this social experiment that's been going across, many cities in the United States. They're looking in going, this isn't really where we want to be. We need a change. And they're voting in overwhelming numbers for a recall election. Hey, this is what we want to see. We want to see anybody in there but Chesa Boudin, right? We know that this is a system that has systematically failed us, not just for decades, but for generations. Well, the voters of, that was Chesa, the voters of San Francisco are saying, your leadership as district attorney has failed us miserably. You out of here. That's what they're saying to him, right? You're gone. You're done. You're toast. San Francisco Mayor London Breed will choose Boudin's replacement. Oh, London Breed. What are you even doing there? Yeah. Right? I mean, what do you even got? It is San Francisco though, right? I mean, you gotta understand kind of its background. It's, Seattle's San Francisco light. It's San Francisco's 2.0 is what Seattle is. It's just, or did I say that backwards? You get what I'm saying. San Francisco is a smaller version. Seattle is a smaller version of San Francisco. It just kind of always has been. Same geographic makeup, same, almost the same weather. I mean, we get a little bit more rain here, I think, but you hear about San Francisco and Seattle, and you're like, that sounds like Seattle, because it just does. And then demographic makeup and kind of how it's configured, and then also political leadership. It's very blue there, very blue here in Washington and Western Washington, Seattle particularly. You get outside of Seattle, you got some real rednecks here in Washington State. I mean, you've got some folks that are like, don't come on my property. You know what I mean? They post those signs, have gun, don't trespass. Whoever is appointed will have to run in the general election to fill the remainder of Boudin's term, which was to last through 2023. So we got a year and a half to go here. Somebody coming in on that, into that office, district attorney. I mean, what a nightmare. I mean, yeah, sign me up. I want to do that job. I don't think so. That's somebody who's got political aspirations though, right? Proponents of the recall claim Boudin, a longtime public defender, or was he? We don't even know what he was doing. Wasn't prosecuting criminals aggressively and said his instituting progressive policies was putting the safety of residents at risk. Yeah, that seems to be the case, doesn't it? When you let everybody go and when you don't prosecute people to begin with, they kind of get the message. The message is loud and clear. Crime, it's okay here in San Francisco. It's go time. Let's have it. Let's go. Here we go. They spent over $7 million blasting that message to voters in San Francisco throughout the course of the campaign. These are proponents of the recall. $7 million. I mean, they're getting some momentum behind them. We'll see where it goes. This election does not mean that San Francisco has drifted to the far right on our approach to criminal justice. No, it got so far left that somebody said, hey, you know what? Yeah, we're Democrats and we're a little bit progressive, but so much of this stuff on the far, far left has just gotten wildly out of control. And it's quite clear that their policies are not working out. We're watching them not work out in real time. I mean, we're living it. San Francisco residents are like, yeah, we're Democrats too, but I mean, it's gotten a little hairy here. That's literally, moderates, which you might say folks that are moderate now are extreme far right, right? Because if you're not on the extreme far left, you got nothing. That's what it feels like. It's one of the reasons I started doing this podcast. I don't feel like I'm extreme any which way. But as a reasonable human being, I know that what's going on the extreme far left isn't reasonable at all. Stuff on the far right, it just doesn't seem to bother me as badly. You got the January 6th thing. That was a debacle. All right, that was just a debacle. Let's do a do-over on that. Let's get a mulligan on that one. If we could get rid of that and a few other things, they don't have much to hang on the hat of the far right. You've got some social clubs, and it's not the extreme danger that I think the media is making it out to be by any means. And I am no part of the far right of any extremist group because I'm reasonable. I view myself as reasonable. That doesn't make a lot of sense. That doesn't make a lot of sense. What do we got that's a little bit down the middle that works and people can agree on? One of the stories I read yesterday that was, it was entertaining to read, but it was also kind of brutal. It was a gun store owner. I can't even remember what state. She had put up something regarding George Floyd, and it was pretty rough. It was, congratulations, George Floyd, on 2 years of sobriety. Now, you're making fun of a dead person, and the big issue was that's racist. I don't think it was racist. I don't think it was meant as racist, but it was really untasteful. The dude's dead. You don't make fun of dead people. I mean, you just don't. If you do, I'm not really down with that. And George Floyd, I think, would be alive today if he wasn't living the thug life. But that doesn't also mean that we should make fun of him in the case that he's dead. So you've got that. That woman had some real haters come after her, the owner of the gun store, and she's got a 1-star rating on Yelp now. But I think there's, if you own a gun store, there's a lot of people on the right that are buying up guns, and she's probably pretty well known. So she probably picked her battles on that one and said, yeah, I'm going to do this. But yeah, I was kind of like, oh, that is fairly offensive. I get what she's saying. I don't think it's racist. She's just taken a pretty major topic that happened in our history and kind of made a point. And it's like, all right, the guy was a drug addict. Can't, but he's dead. So you kind of just let dead people, there's other things to work on now. That guy's no longer around. So that was my take on that. But you've just got so much craziness going on, and people are looking for, all right, what is something that I can get on board with that just doesn't seem to drag me, hardcore one way to the right or the left and is reasonable. That's why we're here, right? Hopefully that's why you're here. This election does not mean that San Francisco has drifted to the far right on our approach to criminal justice. Mary Young, a chair of the recall campaign, said in a statement. Mary Young, don't really know, but Mary, remember George Young? He was Johnny Depp in Blow, right? Great movie. In fact, San Francisco has been a national beacon for progressive criminal justice reform for decades, and will continue to do so with new leadership. Now, in quotes, there should be new leadership that doesn't quite go as far left as Chesa went. Yeah, we need to reel things back in just a smidge. We need to put some criminals in jail. The ones doing the real crime. We need to get those guys back under control. Because, man, San Francisco, you see some crazy stuff going on. You see how many news crews have had their really expensive cameras jacked because they know that not much is going to happen as a result of those kind of crimes, right? Momentum to recall Boudin picked up steam throughout 2021 as hate crimes against Asian Americans in San Francisco increased dramatically, and victims blamed Boudin, saying he was siding with criminals. Well, he's kind of done that all along. That's been the basis of his whole thing. His history as a human being, pretty rough. I mean, I don't really blame him for turning out the way he did. I mean, he didn't really have much of a chance. He really believes that the work he's doing as a public defender and as a district attorney is really helping out his family, out his folks in his circle. Because he wasn't raised by parents. Parents are in jail or in prison. And there were some activists. And so from his standpoint, he's seeing life through his lens. He's doing what should be done because he comes from such a different perspective than I think than a lot of people do. And he was true to that kind of lens on life. It's just that public safety tended to, it got decimated throughout his period. And leading up to this, I think people are saying, you know what? This is too far left. This is too extreme. This isn't working. We need to do a little recall. Let's do this. And so they have. Recall supporters also pointed to car break-ins and viral smash and grab robberies at major retail stores, claiming they were becoming common occurrences as consequences of Boudin's policies. Well, you know what? Yes, and probably no. These crimes have elevated just about every city across the United States. They've elevated. And people want to point, their finger at a Chesa Boudin. All right. He certainly didn't help. It's kind of like the defunding of the police. It certainly didn't help, but it's not the exclusive reason. But in Chesa Boudin's case, he really didn't help out San Francisco. Thinking he was doing that, I think for most reasonable people, they're like, yeah, this isn't going to work long term. You got to go, son. We need somebody else. Boudin's team maintained throughout the campaign that there was no direct correlation between the spike in some crimes and the district attorney's policies. But Tuesday night's results indicate voters didn't buy that message because the voters are living proof. They know that what's going on in their town is because of policies. I mean, it's just, you've got a little extra probably there just because society is pissed off that we had COVID, we got shut down, kids aren't in school, defund the police, all this craziness that happened kind of all at once. And you've got a lot of social unrest. This coming summer, I think you could have some nuttiness go on. And I think the midterm, that will lead right into the midterm elections. And I think you could see some real fireworks, as in not real fireworks. You know what I mean? But not M1000 fireworks. That's a good firework. If you can I wish we still had those. I mean, you could take an entire arm off with one of those bad boys. And as a kid and young adult, until my kids, were old enough, I was really into fireworks. And then I kind of got to thinking, my kids see dad lighting off fireworks and, virtually juggling them before they're going to go off. And then you throw them off. Just boom. Yeah, we'd go to Indian reservations and just load up on fireworks till I got to a point where if one of my kids, lit a firework thinking, well, this is what dad does, and they somehow got injured, hurt, maimed, killed, maybe this isn't what we should be doing. Maybe I should, work back my fireworks game a little bit, but I'm not really willing to do that. So we just kind of stopped doing the, hands-on fireworks, and then we just go to the shows. Haven't had that the last couple of years either, though, right? So I think this midterm election, you could see some real, maybe Antifa pops up. Maybe Antifa's just all there all of a sudden, just going ham for one reason or another, right? That would be that would probably happen, I think. I think that could happen. The recall in San Francisco could have implications for other progressive, reformed-minded prosecutors across the country. Boudin narrowly won in 2019 as progressive prosecutors pledged to focus on alternatives to incarceration and hold police officers accountable. In Los Angeles, organizers are now close to gathering enough signatures to force a recall vote for their district attorney, George Gascon. Now, he was, I believe, the San Francisco district attorney before Chesa came on board. I believe that's the history. He was elected in 2020 and previously served as San Francisco's DA. Should have read that next sentence. I've read this thing before, but clearly, the head doesn't. Yeah. All right. His resignation and subsequent move to Southern California paved the way for Boudin to take office. That's the storyline I remember. It's like, okay, you've gone from bad to arguably worse, because a lot of people not on board with what George is doing either in LA. There are still votes to count, and election results will need to be certified before Breed gets to appoint a replacement. But as of now, San Francisco, you got what you voted for the first time. And then the second time, you're like, this didn't work out. We need a new district attorney. How do you vote somebody in that is so bad, that is so clearly bad? How do you not recognize that going into it? It's kind of like the defund the police thing. How do you not recognize what implications that's going to have? And then you want to just, blame somebody. How does that work? That's simply not reasonable. Like here in state of Washington in Seattle, we've got the whole defund the police thing that happened. And we have so few cops that we can't prosecute basically sexual assault crimes right now. Big debate on that. Well, who do we blame? Well, of course, the right blames, and anybody that's, reasonable blames all of that stuff going on. Defund the police, pooping on police, didn't have enough police to begin with, all of that. And now you don't have enough cops in general. And now they're blaming it on management of the police department. Well, you're not prioritizing sexual assault crimes. It's like, they're only able to prioritize so many crimes. And how did you not see this happening? Where was your sense of reality? Where was your sense of reasonableness through all this? Same thing with the citizens of San Francisco. Well, I guess we've got a progressive district attorney before, and this guy can't be that bad, can he? Well, bad enough where they can recall him by a pretty wide margin. That's wild. Breed has not officially weighed in on the district attorney recall. Of course not. In October 2019, Breed appointed Susie Loftus, the former president of San Francisco Police Commission, as the interim district attorney following Gascon's resignation. Okay. So you just got a bunch of stuff going on. You got a bunch of people in California that I think the rest of us are like, well, glad they're in Cali and they're not here. Although, no, I probably still wouldn't trade any of them for our knuckleheads that we have in office here. Maybe some of our council members. Yeah, a couple council members here. Boy, I'd probably trade anybody. I'd probably trade Mickey Mouse or maybe, Elvis. I'd probably trade Kermit the Frog. He'd do a better job. Who else? Oh, damn near anybody. Anybody could do a better job than some of the knuckleheads we've got in office here. But that's a different story, right? So rounding out here, last month, District 2 Supervisor Stephanie became the first elected official in the city to endorse the recall. When elected officials in San Francisco are endorsing a recall on the district attorney, that's when things might have gotten a little bit outside of the lanes of normalcy, right? Multiple political operatives involved with the recall effort told CBS News that Stephanie would likely to be considered by Breed as a potential replacement. Okay, that's not saying much. Yeah, you've just got some direction in California that doesn't seem to be working out. Why are people still moving there? I mean, you got the whole job thing, all right? You got so many other things that have gone sideways in California. You got that income tax. At least if you live in Seattle, have an state income tax. We know it's coming because our political leadership here is, we need some more revenue. It's coming. At some point in time, it's coming. So you're going to have these, states that have income tax and don't, and those are all being wildly divided, like right in front of our eyes. It's like, okay, if you lean this way, you go here. If you lean this way, you go here. Yeah, the division is amazing, right? But I thought it was super interesting on this one that, he's out of there. Chesa Boudin, out of there. Wild. Not crazy wild, but that it happened? Yeah. 2 thumbs up. All right. That's it from me. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for joining. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.